Hey guys, this is your host Thomas Tyree here from On the Hot Podcast. Today, this will be the Combat Series episode number 90 for you guys today. And to start off this week's episode, I'll be sharing my thoughts on the controversial fight that took place last night in the sport of boxing at the lightweight division between Gervonta Davis and Lamont Roach. So last night, Gervonta Davis defended the WBA lightweight title against Lamont Roach, who's the current reigning defending WBA champion at 130, moved up to 135 to try to become a two-division world champion simultaneously. However, last night, Gervonta Davis and Lamont Roach's fight ended in a majority draw that basically created a lot of controversy around the world of combat sports, especially in the boxing community. So I'll be sharing my thoughts on that fight that took place last night. Now, if I'm being honest, you guys know I love me some Tank, but all biasness aside, Lamont Roach won that fight and he was robbed. I scored the fight 115-113 in favor of Lamont Roach. I think Lamont Roach did enough to become the new WBA lightweight champion last night in the sport of boxing. However, two judges thought it was a majority draw, which the fight ended in a draw, which I don't understand how one judge thought that Gervonta Davis won the fight. I don't think Gervonta Davis did enough. Lamont Roach outlanded Gervonta Davis in total punches. He basically landed more punches in every category than Gervonta Davis. Now, the most controversial round was in round 9, where Gervonta Davis got hit with a jab and he took a knee. He took a knee because he said the grease from his hair that he just got twisted a few days ago was bothering him. He took a knee. The referee started to count like it was a knockdown, and Gervonta Davis called his own timeout and went to the corner to get a towel in between rounds. You cannot do that. These high-class fighters, these box office attractions, got to stop trying to make their own rules up. Gervonta is 30 years of age. He has 30 victories, multiple-time world champion. He knows what's right and wrong. If it's a knockdown, Lamont Roach wins the fight. But you got Gervonta Davis complaining about that. And another thing is, we've seen so many elite fighters in world title fights coming, blood gushing from their face, bleeding all over the board. Nose, a broken nose. I've seen Amanda Serrano is a perfect example. When her eyelid, when she fought Katie Taylor on the Jake Paul Mike Tyson card a few months ago. Prime example of fighters have weathered the storm in between rounds when something is bothering them, and they have found a way to get to the next round, and the corner takes care of it. Gervonta Davis, twist or no twist, grease or no grease. You got hit with a jab, and you said it in the press conference. You got hit with a jab, it blinded you, and you didn't want to get hurt. You didn't want to get hurt, so you voluntarily took a knee moments after taking a jab. I'm sorry, that's a knockdown. That is a clear knockdown. As that knockdown is scored, then Lamont Roach wins the fight. Lamont Roach wins the fight. There's no debating that, because round 9 was probably my favorite round in the fight. Very action-packed. Both fighters are fighting back and forth in the pocket, exchanging great combinations, great blows, a lot of counter strikes in that 9th round that really got the fans into at the Barclays Center. Everybody on their feet. I was pretty excited watching at home the 9th round. That was my favorite round. But I get that 9th round to Tank. But if that knockdown happens based on the back and forth exchanges in the 9th round, that would be scored 10-8 in favor of Lamont Roach for the 9th round, which that would give him the victory. So Tank is very lucky for his sake that he got away with that knockdown in the 9th round, or what should have been called a knockdown, but he got away with it. He got very lucky. But man, I'm telling you guys, boxing can be a really good sport, but a corrupt sport at the same time. And I just felt like that pivotal moment in the fight changed everything. But at least Tank can say he didn't lose yet in his career. He's got a draw. The perfect record is gone. That draw is going to stay on your resume forever. So I'm going to get more in depth into this fight. Gervonta Davis, was he off last night? To me, he did not look focused. I have watched Tank's career basically from the ground up. I would say I followed Tank's career from 2016 until now. So that's 9 years. I followed Tank's whole entire career. I have never seen Gervonta Davis this mentally out of a fight. He was there, but he was not. His head was not there. I could tell watching the fight. And I'm not making excuses for him because, like I just said Lamont Roach won that fight. But I don't think he mentally prepared for Lamont Roach. I think he took Lamont Roach lightly. I think someone that was hungry to move up to 135 was not just there for a payday. He was there to be a 2-division world champion, that being Lamont Roach. And what I saw, I know Tank likes to pander to the crowds. Yes, we know he's a box office attraction. He literally electrifies boxing fans around the world. He is one of the reasons why boxing is thriving right now. However, when I see that your focus is not there, you're complaining to the referee about calls, you don't know what round it is, and your title's on the line, you don't know what round you're in the fight. He was arguing with Coach Calvin Ford, not listening. He was yelling at Calvin, whether it was in between the 9th and the 10th, in between that split time frame, yelling at Calvin, you need to listen to me, Calvin. Calvin is the number one guy that gets Tank straight when he's down in rounds or he sees mistakes happening in the ring. When you're not going to listen to your corner, all hell breaks loose in fights because they have the best seats in the house. They have front row seats to watch your fight and give their insight about what you're doing good and what you're doing bad in between rounds and the adjustments that need to be made. I didn't see no adjustments being made by Tank's corner, which I felt like there was maybe a little bit, I wouldn't say a distraction, but when you had that many voices in your head telling you what to do, Coach Barry was there, Coach Calvin was there, Coach Kenny was there. I don't think the messages were getting to Tank of what to do with the adjustments. And I think that was one of the reasons why Lamont Roach was capitalizing on him, landing a lot of counter strikes, getting home to the combinations, because Tank basically fought the same fight, the entire fight. I will say this too, the boxing fundamentals for Tank after round 5, they were gone. They were gone. And I know that, yes, Tank was landing the power shots like he does, the counter strikes like he does. But when I'm talking about game plan, after round 5, Tank shut out. He was shut out. He was shut out in terms of not following the game plan, not being mentally there. He checked himself out. And that's why I felt like Lamont Roach was getting the better of him last night in that boxing ring. But, again, not being alert defensively, getting clipped by counter strikes and punches is the reason why we're here. We're talking about Tank having a majority draw when in reality Lamont Roach won that fight. And then to the argument of some people, you have to beat the champion. Lamont proved to me that he did enough to take WBA title last night. He really did. Just because it wasn't your flavor of a knockdown or he didn't do the things that hurt Tank. Well, he did rock Tank a couple times, actually. Now I take that back. But if you're looking at it, I think he did enough. He outboxed him at several times in the fight. He did enough. And especially if that knockdown is scored, Lamont is your WBA champion at lightweight right now. But to Lamont Roach's point, I give him a lot of credit. Me, myself, and a lot of people in the boxing community did not give Lamont Roach a true chance. Which Lamont came to fight, and he put together the best performance of his boxing career thus far. He's only 30 years of age, so it can only go up from here. Lamont Roach, a lot of people didn't know about Lamont Roach because he wasn't a pay-per-view star or a box office attraction or a household name. But for somebody that follows the sport and watch Lamont on several undercards or watched him over on ESPN Top Rank over the years, Lamont had the skills, but we just didn't think it would be enough to possibly defeat Gervonta Davis. But he put together one hell of a performance on a big-time stage, on a big-time platform at the Barclays Center that sold out, set the record gate. He's a part of that, so he deserves credit. And for someone that's never been on this moment, on this stage, this moment did not hurt him or affect his performance. Outclassed Gervonta Davis. Counter punches, jabs, combinations. This was the best performance of Lamont Roach's career. So he has a lot to be proud of and can be, I would say, confident moving forward. Because you just hung in there for 12 rounds against a top 10 pound-for-pound fighter in Gervonta Davis and gave him his toughest fight. and you arguably won. So hey, I gotta say that Lamont Roach shocked me and proved me wrong. Now, was Gervonta Davis exposed in this fight? I think a little bit defensively, but I wouldn't overuse the word exposed because at the end of the day, this was Tank's worst performance of his career. In terms of not being mentally there, having a bad night in the office. Tank has really never had a bad night in the ring. This is actually his first time. And your guys' favorite fighters have had bad nights in the ring too. This is something that happens in combat sports. It's not the end of the world. Can I go on about Shakur Stevenson having a bad night against Edwin De Los Santos? Yes, but is he still a top 10 pound-for-pound fighter? Yes, it happens. What about Devin Haney being dribbled off the canvas four times by a signature check left hook by Ryan Garcia? He's still one hell of a fighter. It happens. What about Ryan Garcia being stopped by Tank nearly 2 years ago, being knocked out for the first time in his career? It happens. Teofimo Lopez having a bad night, losing to George Kambosos and what was one of the biggest upsets of recent memory in boxing. It happens. He's still one hell of a fighter, pound for pound. What about Canelo Alvarez losing against Dimitri Bivol in dominating fashion nearly 3 years ago? He bounced back. It happened. So I think based off of what happens now is going to define who Gervonta Davis is, which I'm going to get into of what's next for him. Now, what's next for Tank is Gervonta has no choice but to give Lamont Roach a rematch. Lamont Roach is deserving of a rematch. The WBA is actually going to order, I think I've just read something that the WBA is going to order the rematch based on how controversial that 9th round was last night in the sport of boxing. So Tank versus Roach should definitely happen by the end of 2025. Part 2 should happen by the end of 2025. But guys, I think this draw might have been the best thing for Tank's career because this is going to get him focused. And I really believe last night, if he was successful against Lamont Roach, he was going to call out Jake Paul. He was going to call out Jake Paul. Because Shakur Stevenson was at the fight, but he was not in Tank's locker room. There's only one guy that Tank would be bold enough to call out that entered his locker room friendly before the fight. And that had to be Jake Paul because he was there at the fight. But it would have been such a bad look for Tank if he called out Jake Paul for somebody that put a rehydration clause and a catch weight for Ryan Garcia, for somebody that does not want to move up to 140 or 147, to call out and fight a YouTuber, an influencer that is a boxer but fights old retired guys, that is 200 plus pounds. You get in the ring with him, but you don't want to move up to 140 or 147? That would have been a bad look. But I think Tank should give Lamont that rematch, and if he gets past Lamont, then we start unifying for the titles at lightweight between Shakur, Lomachenko, and Keyshawn. The time is now. No more games. You're in it or you're out, Tank. And moving forward, Coach Calvin needs to be the main trainer. I'm sorry. Coach Calvin is the number one guy that can hit that button to get Tank going in fights. He needs that. There was no urge from Barry saying he said we need these rounds. But Calvin will put it on him and Tank will go out there and execute the plan. Didn't see that. All love to Barry, Coach Barry. But Coach Calvin Ford, that is his job, to be the main trainer for Tank. Now, closing out, what's next for Lamont Roach? Like I said, a star was born last night in the sport of boxing. An unknown commodity for most. Lamont Roach being from the DMV. He was already a world champion. He's still a world champion at 130, holding that WBA title. Moved up the weight and had a surprising performance that shocked the boxing community. A star is born. I would like to see Lamont, whether if he goes back down to 130, I would like to see him unify the titles with Emmanuel Narvate or Foster. Those are two big fights for him in 130. Or if he stays on 135, like I said, Tank owes him that rematch. He owes it. He owes him that rematch. Or if he doesn't get Tank next, he should fight Shakur Stevenson because they were already talking about it. I think that's a great fight between Lamont and Shakur at 135. Plus, that would be basically a proven performance. If Tank couldn't beat Lamont, what if Shakur can? And have a dominating performance with it. So the doors have opened for Lamont. This draw might be the best thing for him because now he's going to get the paydays. He's going to be on big-time platforms now and get big fights at 130 or 135. But that is my Gervonta Davis versus Lamont Roach fight summary.